Hey there, welcome to another real-time edit. Today I have one of my favorite warblers from this past season, this Kentucky Warbler. This bird has been one hell of a struggle for me. It took me 3 years just to see my first one, and then which was this year, and then I actually ended up managing to go from never having seen one to spending probably about, I don't know, between 20 and 30 hours cumulatively over a period of a couple weeks, actually sitting around and photographing one, and eventually got to see the nest and everything. Anyway, that's besides the point. I got this great image of this one here. He was kind of skulking along, popped in. I love how he hit kind of right in between the opening here, between this little growth on this side and this side. Ideally, he would have moved, like an inch or two to the left to clear the tail there, but can't have everything perfect, so I'll take it. In any case, let's start with a crop. And I don't need as much on the right side there, so let's do a little bit of an offset composition. I like having this leaf in there. I don't want this one in, but if I crop that one out, I'm going to clip that one, so I'm going to leave the crop this way, just pretty much like that, and then I'll actually just clone that out in Photoshop. The bottom of this log is definitely getting hit with some light, a little bit too much, so let's darken that, really take the highlights and like the whites down, just kind of reduce the contrast on that. That's pretty good. Overall, just a little lighter in the exposure. We'll kick the highlights up, the shadows up, and then bring the blacks back to maintain contrast. I'm going to throw a real big, soft, slight vignette on this just to kind of darken everything but the bird. And that seems like a pretty good start. Obviously, this vine up here I'm not a fan of. I'm definitely going to remove that. So I think we're pretty good to hop into Photoshop at this point. Alright, first things first, retouch layer. Let's clean up some of this stuff. I don't like that leaf coming in. Back to the clone tool, I'm just going to get rid of this brown, kind of out of focus, whatever that was coming in. I'm going to go back to the spot healing brush and just use that to remove this overall. I'm guessing it's going to leave some weird patterns, but I'll clean them up with the clone tool after the fact. So let's see how it does. It should at least remove the object for me. There we go, and you can see it left, like I said, some weird patterns, but now I'll just come back in with the clone tool and just kind of blend these things in smoothly, but at least now I don't have to start from scratch to remove the whole object. So this is a technique I use quite often. The one problem with coming back in with the clone tool now and smoothing out these areas is if I zoom in a bunch here, you can see, especially up here, look how much original texture and kind of noise is in the image in the background here. Where I did all this smooth cloning in this area, it kind of reduced that. So for consistency's sake, to keep things looking like I didn't smooth and edit them, I'm actually going to add noise back in. That's a little bit too much. So this is under filter noise, add noise. And so I just kind of dial in that amount and then bring it back in so it all kind of blends in smoothly back there. This is pretty cool. There's like a little spider web going from that leaf to there. I love this little leaf with the wet kind of catching the light there. And then whatever the hell this thing is, I do not like. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And back to the healing brush. It should kind of work really well here. Let's see if it'll get rid of that whole vertical leaf for me and just put some of that texture back in. Looks pretty good. It's pretty random. Looks pretty natural. Yeah. I think that about does it as far as cleanup goes. So next thing, let's grab a burn layer, grab our brush. Just going to really darken this log in the foreground here. And then this top edge is just getting weirdly a bit light. I kind of like how the background is a little lighter down here by the bird and darker at the top naturally. So maybe I'll just, too much. I'll just kind of naturally enhance that even more. And we'll maybe just kind of do some real light burning on this side. Boy, every once in a while that brush stroke just hits heavy. And there we go, something like that, right? Natural spotlight and vignette to kind of bring us into the bird. Let's lighten the bird's head a little bit. So we're going to use a Dodge Curves layer. And we'll just paint that in there. And the overhead spotlight effect is kind of nice, but we'll just lighten a little bit on the underside of the body. I'm sure if you guys have been following me for a while, you know me and catch lights, how I love them. So here we go, another Dodge layer. We'll just really punch up that catch light. And then here's a problem that happens a lot in bird photography in the forest, especially with these yellow songbirds. There's a ton of green light bouncing around, obviously, from all these leaves, the light filtering through the leaves overhead. There's a little bit of green here. There may have been more on the other side there. I can tell you on this side of the log underneath here was the entire ground was just covered in green, right? So all this green light is bouncing around up in there, underneath the bird there. So we need to counter correct for that. I don't know if counter correct was the right word. We need to counter that and correct for that. That sounds a little better. So I'm just going to throw a curves layer on, go to the green channel, and then pull some of that green out. And you can see already the bird looks so much more natural underneath, right? It made the wings go too magenta, but in any case, I'm going to use a nice big soft brush and then paint underneath here to kind of bring this tone back. And I could just see it with my eye. It was too green. And we'll kind of clean these tones up. Now you notice that I'm painting into the background, right? And I don't want to really do that, but that's okay. I'm just going to go back now with a harder, somewhat harder brush, larger brush, and paint with black to kind of bring that color tone back in where I overlapped. And you can see it's weird. It kind of almost looks like the image is getting lighter sometimes back there, but it's just the original green tone coming back that I had just adjusted out of the image in that area. So there we go. Let's look at that mask, make sure I didn't miss any areas. Yeah, some weird area up there. There, I cleaned up all that. I have a nice clean edge. And now watch this when I turn it on and off, okay? So look, before all that green, now it brings it a lot closer back to the neutral color. I probably went too far, so I'm just going to lower the opacity, probably like maybe 60%. And I think something like that should look good. And one last thing, I'm just going to kind of punch the blacks. Oh, there we go. That's looking good. That's too much overall, but we can just paint it in somewhat on the head and then really just across here. And then the last thing is there's a little bit of that magenta tone kind of hanging in the log there, so maybe we can clean that up by adding some green. And we'll just softly paint that across the bottom image here. All right, there we go. So total before, after. Again, nothing major, no huge crazy changes here, but drawing our eye into the bird, cleaning up these little kind of distracting things in the background and that weird thing that was hanging there. And overall, I think it kind of gives us a little bit of a cleaner image. And you know, I've always said when I share my photos and when people ask me, I am a photographer who likes to share beautiful photos of wildlife. I don't think, in my opinion, that I change the entire look of the scene with my editing, but I have no problem removing things like that and these little kind of spots in the background and stuff like that that I find distracting. Whereas I know some wildlife photographers are more purists and they want the scene to be perfect as is. I totally respect that. Just not my taste. I would rather have an image that looks like that than have some of these distractions in it. So again, but I think it still maintains the integrity of the scene. And if I were to remove, let's say I had a branch going like right smack through the middle of this bird or something like that. If I were to remove something like that in post, I would totally let you know, because I feel like that's a big mistake on my part and something that really needs to be clarified that I corrected. But, you know, from this change to this change, I don't think I really need to divulge that when I share this photo. But I do let everybody know that I clean my images up. So hopefully you learned something on this real-time edit and enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching, and hopefully you join me next time.